We're here to tell stories about entrepreneurship, innovation, and diversity. I'm Victoria Saucier, and this is a Moonshot Minds with Kate Koplovitz.
Yeah.
I hope I pronounced it right.
Yes, you did. Perfect.
Well, Kate, it's a pleasure to have you here. I really appreciate you taking the time and sit down with us. You're an amazing woman. You created you founded the USA Network in late 70s, a long time ago. You're the first woman to head television network. And I look at this very successful career. One of the most striking things is that the launch of the enterprises, Springboard Enterprises, we just discussed. This is essentially a platform which helps women to build successful businesses. What was the inspiration behind that?
Well, it's pretty interesting. After building a multi-billion-dollar business with USA Network and the Sci-Fi Channels and the media business and distributing programming around the world, I really felt that when President Clinton then in the late 90s had asked me to chair the National Women's Business Council, which is an appointment, it's not a job, it's an appointment.
It's very important appointment, I would say.
But it was really to report to Congress on the change of women-led businesses, were they making progress, especially with procurement from the federal government, but in general, what were women progressing in the marketplace of business? And I thought, that's interesting, but honestly didn't float my boat in the sense that I really felt it wasn't enough to be reporting. It was, if I were going to do it, I wanted to have something that would make a difference. What would make a difference for women? And I know because I started businesses back in the 70s where there wasn't all this capital around. And there certainly no one thought that we needed any more television networks. And cable television was really nascent at that time, and people didn't think it was going to be anything of any importance. And yet I saw a real opportunity to bring new programming to an industry that actually needed programming if it was going to, in regional programming, and I chose sports as the original programming when I started. So Madison Square Garden Sports evolved into USA Network and brought all the major sports to cable, but more importantly, maybe in a way, is creating the business model that made it successful, because at that time TV was only doing advertising, and they were paying television stations to carry their signal. And for me, I had to reverse that and have the cable television people pay us for the programming. We delivered the programming. So we had that new model. Anyway, having done that and gone through all of that for a number of years, I really felt like women, and I did not, it was not because I was a woman, it's because at the time, mostly because it was really, there was no belief that cable television program networks would be anything. People really didn't believe they'd amount to anything. But later on, in the late 90s, when I saw all this money pouring over the transom in venture capital, which I didn't really know that much about, I read about it, but I wasn't in it, I just said, look, we've got to get women who are in technology, because I came with the idea of satellites and technology to the television programming landscape. I thought, well, women are going to bring new technologies, and there are a lot of women in science, and if they're going to be bringing new companies to market, they're going to have to raise outside capital. And I really wanted to see if they were getting the capital in the market. What we found out was, no, they weren't. They weren't getting the capital. What was the reason? I wanted to know. I asked a lot of people in the investing market, and they basically said to me that they just didn't see women. Women didn't come and pitch businesses to them. They really didn't. So what I found out was really more of a disconnect than a rejection. They really weren't seeing them. Why weren't they seeing them? They weren't in their networks, and so they really didn't know them. So in 1999, a few colleagues and I I found a few colleagues in Silicon Valley who would help us really see if we could find women starting companies, entrepreneurs who would have companies that venture capitalists might be interested in. So that's what we did.
Speaking about that, you wrote that famous book, Been There, Run There, where you said that in order to fund their businesses, women need to find that stiletto network. What is exactly stiletto network?
Well, that's something a little bit different in terms of the Stiletto Network is really a book that really talks about how women are networking and helping and coming together. There was a period of time in the 70s, 80s, and even in the 90s where there weren't that many women at high levels in different companies. Correct. So that really, there wasn't enough a group of people that really could help you.
Right now, even.
Well, but there are a lot more women coming up in companies and running big multinational divisions of companies. There are a lot more women entrepreneurs, and they become a lot more savvy about what it means to raise outside capital. And so that's really how the environment is changing, I think, in the 17 years that I've been doing this. In other words, identifying women entrepreneurs in technology and life sciences to come to market to raise capital. There's been a tremendous change in their understanding of what it's going to take to raise capital. And what we really do is teach them the language of capital investment. You know, because let's face it, if you're a microbiologist and you've been in a lab developing drugs for 15 years, and you have a drug that you think you would like to bring to market and commercialize and take, why would you know how to raise capital? That's not what you've been doing.
Yeah,
but you have tremendous expertise, and you also have a vision of something that you want to bring to market. How do you do that? And so the companies that come to Springboard Enterprises, which we started back in '99 and brought the first class out to meet people in Silicon Valley in January 2000. That was a time when people didn't believe women would build these scalable companies. And they didn't have any connections with them. And so we went out to find applications and get people to come in and apply, women to come in and apply. We were hoping to get 100 applications, so maybe we could find 10 entrepreneurs to present to venture capitalists. 350 applications flooded in, and we had a tremendous pool of choices, and we ultimately chose 26 to present in that first class January 2000 after going through our boot camp and matching them with experts to speak to them about different things that they would have to know about the venture market and also how they could strengthen their businesses. And we've been doing that ever since. And you know what was really interesting about that?
I was about to ask you.
What was really interesting about that was that 22 of those 26 companies got funded.
Interesting.
2 other companies merged their business because they were essentially in the same software business, and 1 woman sold her business, and only 1 woman didn't raise capital out of the entire class. And do you know what is even more fascinating? Is this is actually holding up over 17 years. And I tell you that we've now brought over 660 companies through, entrepreneurs through our process. 86% of them raise capital. That's 4 times the national average. And 81% are in business today over 17 years. That is also about 4 times the national average. So why? Why are these women that we're selecting performing so well? Why are the results so spectacular? And the reason is, not only do we have a very thorough vetting process to get the people are selected for the program. This starts right there with the selection process. So we have selection committees around the country and in different countries that we operate in that are on the ground people. They're knowledgeable, they're venture capitalists, they're entrepreneurs, they're lawyers, accountants, they're corporate champions. They have a very good knowledge of what is on the ground in their locations. And we have an expert network of over 4,000 experts in different fields of the technology businesses, which are a broad scope of businesses today, technology applied to a lot of different industries, and life sciences, which include biotech, devices, diagnostics, and healthcare IT. We have a lot of experts in these fields at different stages, so the important thing for an entrepreneur is to be able to access the right person at the right time.
You support women through the life cycle of developing the company.
And they are really, accelerating the growth. We are in the business of helping these entrepreneurs accelerate the growth to get their companies to scale and be sustainable. That's why 81% of these companies are in business today, whether they've been bought by somebody else. And by the way, 170 plus companies have already had a liquidity event, including 14 IPOs. And I'm saying that I do not know any other organization that has this kind of results. And so that's why I say we're very focused on getting our companies to scale and to be sustainable and to create really good results for people who are investing in them and for the entrepreneurs and their employees.
That is amazing results.
Yeah.
I want to ask you a question. Do you think it's important to have a female investing partner in a venture firm to increase the likelihood of investing in female founders?
Well, data will tell us that it's extremely important to have. If a woman,
Why?
woman is on the investing team or is the primary investor that is screening the company, that entrepreneur, that woman entrepreneur, has a 70% greater chance of being funded than if it is an all-male team.
Interesting.
And you might
Why is
ask
this?
why. Because women have a little bit different language that we use to describe things, and also women bring things to market that men have no idea what they are. For example, we launched Fashion Tech Lab in New York 5 years ago, almost 5 years ago. We're in our 4th class right now, and there are things in the fashion and retail businesses that are really changing those businesses dramatically, with the consumer ability to access in the palm of her hand online, offline, competitive
Yes.
products, even when you're in the store shopping, and et cetera, and fast manufacturing and 3D printing and all these other things that are changing the industry. No interest to most men who are investing. The only thing they do, and I find this very insulting for the entrepreneurs, and this is not to be insulting to anyone's wife, but mostly if the entrepreneur is even slightly interested, he'll say, well, I'll ask my wife if she knows of this company or she would do something like this.
That is
And
amazing.
so you're going to, it's sort of like you're dependent on the opinion of one person who isn't even in the investment business primarily, even though she might be in a very wonderful business of her own, or she may be in no business. But asking, and I that's what happens. However, if a woman is on that in making that investment, the woman likely has a much bigger or better idea of whether that is something that is viable in the marketplace. And let's remember things about healthcare.
Mhm.
Women basically are in charge of healthcare for their families.
Right.
And women understand what it's like to operate in the healthcare system. So when you take something like healthcare IT, when you look at how patients are interacting with their doctors, their hospitals, their insurance providers, etc., women are much more knowledgeable oftentimes about that because they're the ones that actually have to operate within it.
And women are more proactive in taking preventive
And
measures.
that's why we see a lot of women entrepreneurs in healthcare IT. Even when you talk about going back to fashion tech, we have amazing technology people in fashion tech. The women are in this year's class are very heavily into AR and VR and all kinds
It's
of
the future.
all kinds of technology. Some of them come out of being in the military and having worked with technology in the military.
Mm.
And we have entrepreneurs from different countries who are bringing really different knowledge to this group, and they happen to have an interest in fashion and retail, and they are applying the technology that they've learned, and they are engineers, they are scientists. But it happens, some of them are PhD in artificial intelligence,
Interesting.
and it's very interesting. It's much different than I think a lot of people would imagine. Who are these people? And it's very interesting, amazing stories of women entrepreneurs who are really coming up with new products, new services for the marketplace, and also ones that are being competitive in marketplaces where you find a lot more men who would be interested in.
So what is the biggest mistake, not just women, but in general, the entrepreneurs make when they're reaching out to investors?
Well, I think that one of the biggest mistakes is people don't do enough research as to exactly what the investment thesis is of that particular fund. In other words, it's not important to go to any fund. It's important to go to funds or investors or family offices, whichever, however you're looking at your investment pool, or your seed investors or your angel investors. There's a whole, sort of a whole spectrum of investors out there. To really do homework on who are people that are investing in your sector, so that you don't waste your time or their time if they are not really in your sector of investing. So that's one thing. The other thing I think for women in particular is to really, really know your your financial information backwards and forwards in depth yourself. That you really can speak the business of the language of business in addition to what your product is. And we talk about this with scientists. We have a lot of women scientists who have a PhD in microbiology, or two PhDs, one in microbiology and one in physics, or one in computational mathematics and the science. And it's amazing how well educated people are, but still they have to learn the language of speaking finance.
It's a whole field, and it might be very, very challenging. And women have some other challenges too, in general, and especially in the industries which is male-dominated industries. In a lot of cases, earning respect can be a struggle for women. So, what the strategies women should use to build confidence and overcome this self-deprivation, putting themselves
One of the things that we
development.
teach, one of the primary things we teach at Springboard is really to learn. I call it learning the sound of your learning to love the sound of your own voice. Is how I really want to say it, because you have to trust that you speak with authority, that people will accept you as authority. And then ultimately, I believe people accept you for how you present yourself,
Right.
or what they really perceive you are as a person, your strength. And you have to speak up for yourself. You have to claim your successes for people, not be afraid to tell people what you've done that is going to make them want to invest in you. And people need, number one, people actually need to like you. They don't want to really be investing in someone they think it's going to be very difficult for them to deal with, or even if they got a brilliant business proposition, whatever. I think that's likability is something that I think women have a good leg up on that. I think women understand how to relate to people, but I do think that they have to claim their own success stories so people know that they are qualified, that they've had success, that they are really people that they can bet on, that they are going to deliver what they say they're going to deliver. Those are really important attributes for women to know. Yet I think that we are still, as women, or even minorities in businesses, still coming up against sort of the relationship issue. And it is a network of people. And especially in Silicon Valley, I think you still find a boys' network well embedded. And it's really, they do invest in one another. I'm not criticizing them for doing that. I'm just saying they support their own.
To do what is more comfortable.
And we all do that to some degree. And we need to have more women on the investing side to support. Over 500 firms have invested in women and Springboard. So we have a lot of different men and women who are investing in the Springboard entrepreneurs, these women entrepreneurs. But we're only as many as we are. It's there are many more people out there, and we're still a relatively small percentage of the entrepreneurs that are out there looking for growth capital.
But it's very small.
And so we just need to keep growing the number of women on the investing side, as well as women entrepreneurs, and that concentric building of more. One of the things I really like about the Springboard alums is that when they have liquidity events, oftentimes they come back and invest at angel level in entrepreneurs coming behind them. In other words, they're looking for who is really doing things in areas where they have expertise or that they're interested in. And we're creating this environment, which is 360, that you really, you build, you get the benefit of this powerful network that we've created. And then you come back and you become part of the powerful network that helps other people.
That's very
behind
important.
you, and that is very, very important.
It's very important. Breaking in the high-level business networks, and again, it's mostly male-dominated in most areas.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. It can be a struggle for a lot of women, and they might kill their success just because of the lack of that network in general. So how would you encourage women to cope with the fear of failure? Because a lot of founders encounter that, and female especially.
I think that oftentimes, men will say that business failed, not that I failed. Women will
And
say,
they celebrate the failure in a lot of communities.
we can get a little carried away with saying failure is wonderful. Failure, though, if you don't risk, if you aren't willing to go out there and risk, then, maybe you won't fail, but maybe you won't succeed either. You've got to take risks. And in the venture capital market, or in the early stage funding markets, a lot of companies do not succeed ultimately to get to a liquidity event.
Mm-hmm.
Our performance is way above the national average for that, but just in general, I think you have to take a failure as a learning experience. What did you learn from it, and what can you do in the future? And that applies what you learned in that failure to getting a success the next time. And I think men are much more comfortable with that than women, but I do find that progressively over time, in the last 17 years, women have become more understanding of what that means to start and maybe not be able to bring a company to full fruition, and to be able to start another company and learn from their experience. And I think women are more and more, I'm seeing women be able to come to the marketplace and understand that they are not a failure if the company ultimately fails, that they've got to learn. Yes, we all feel bad if we have people invest and it doesn't turn out. I've invested in companies that didn't turn out. I've asked people to invest in companies that didn't turn out. And myself, I've lost, investments on companies that didn't turn out. So, and it's not that I didn't believe in the entrepreneur, and that lots of things change in the marketplace. Sometimes they lose out to the competition because of a turn they took left or right. And I think that if we really believe in the person, we'll come back and support them another time. But I think that it is interesting when you look at.
That's not typical.
No, in Silicon Valley though, that club is very proud of being a failure. I don't think you find it as like that much on the East Coast. People will accept something that's failed on the East Coast. There's a little difference in attitude in the United States. And I think around the world, there are different cultural things now because the capital pools are now forming in different places. It's not just Silicon Valley or just New York or just Boston. And they're very different, by the way. New York and Boston have a very different sensitivity to what kinds of companies and how they will invest than Silicon Valley does.
Well,
it's kind of interesting.
What's the short observation between those two markets?
Mm-hmm. What is? Yeah, the East Coast investors in general, it's a generalization, it's not everyone, but they are more looking for, earlier signs of reoccurring revenue streams. They're looking for investments that are closer to break even and profitability, and so they're looking for actual block of tackle, whereas you'll see more, obviously, a really, really big pools of capital in the Sequoias and Benchmarks and companies like that, firms like that. They've raised so much capital, and
they have to deploy the
capital. And they have to deploy huge amounts of capital, billions of dollars. So they're looking at companies that are just like at the top of the uber unicorns that are out there, and they've got to put that capital to work, and that's why there's been a lot of delaying of companies going public, because they want to get bigger and bigger. I think that it's going to become a problem because when those companies are ultimately forced to go public, to have a liquidity event for all those investors, the public markets may not value them, and we've seen a lot of that. And at the same time, I think it kind of distorts the market for most companies. If you listen to someone like Alan Patricof from Graycroft, he will say, anyone asks him any number of times, that they never expect any of their invested companies, their companies that they've invested in, to go public. That is an assumption. They never make that assumption that they're going to go public. And the fact is, no company they've ever invested in has gone public. They've all sold to strategics or financials, but mostly strategics, and they've done well. And
there's different dynamics when you go public. Company completely changes when you go to this.
Yes, it's a different kind of company.
You serve a different.
running a public company is serious business today. It's you've got a much different constituency that you now have to answer to, instead of a subset of investors that are private. And so it's a different way of evaluating companies, or evaluated by earnings per share and multiples that are in the sector, and that's a different multiple factor than you would find in sort of valuations in private equity or private venture capital putting money behind growth companies. So it's and by the way, investors at the early stage can make a lot of money if the total investment in the company is $10 million and that company sells for $60 million. A 6x on an investment in 5 years is a very desirable return for most investors, I would say.
Well, a lot of investors in Silicon Valley, it's a matter of numbers. There are so many failures that for them, the exit should be 800, 600 million.
Yeah.
Much bigger numbers.
Yeah.
But on that subject, what I noticed that a lot of times women don't think big.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of want more steady, slower, maybe more safe growth.
Yeah.
And they don't have this moonshot thinking, how to build, how to take a risk, as you said. What would you? How do you encourage women to think bigger, to recognize the accomplishment and ability to do that?
Yeah. Well, it is true that women are a little bit, in general, a little bit more cautious. But the women that we have at Springboard, we are very focused on getting them to scale. So from the very beginning, when they come into our boot camp, we are also enlarging their vision, talking to them about the ways that they can scale their company and pathways to scaling and the capital that have to be raised, and really going through that exercise with them. And I think it's, and they really understand it, very quickly. Within two days of the first boot camp that they're with at the beginning of their training process, you can just see the difference in 2 days in their attitude. So it's really just exposure. It's exposure to thinking. It's exposure to experts who've been through it. It's exposure to other entrepreneurs who are there who have been through it, maybe the year before, 2 years before. And, so it's not a frightening experience to think about it. A lot of it's just really, have they been exposed to the sort of the exponential thinking, and where do they think they can really take the company? And a lot of them really then do see the value of raising more capital and really going in a pathway that is accelerating their business more quickly, which we want them to do oftentimes to be competitive in the marketplace. Because if you're not the first out of the marketplace, but the second or third, you can do pretty well. But if you're going to start lagging behind in a marketplace where others are competing with you, you'll get washed out eventually.
Yeah, it's going to be a catch-up, and it's much harder to deal with that.
Yeah.
I want to get a little bit more personal. Do you believe in luck?
I do. My father used to tell me about luck. He said luck is when preparation and opportunity meet.
Oh, wow.
And he said, then you'll be lucky. And to give you an example of that, I wrote my master's thesis on satellite technology and its potential impact on communications and even something much broader, sort of the world order. At the time, it was in the 60s, and we were in the Cold War. We really didn't know what was behind the Berlin Wall or the Great Wall of China. Today, there is no Berlin Wall, and the Great Wall of China is to bring people in, not to keep people out. But at that time, I thought, wow, satellite communications really can't be stopped. We could get behind these walls, we could understand people, and my belief was that people are pretty similar. They want similar things in life. If we could communicate, maybe it would set people free in their minds, not to say overthrow governments, but, set them free. And so I wrote my master's thesis on that, and that was in 1968, and it really wasn't until 1975 that we got an opportunity to really use satellites for commercial purposes in the United States. And I worked in the satellite business. I worked, after I got my master's thesis, satellite business at Communications Satellite Corporation, in the cable business, and I also was a television producer working my way through college. So I had the skills, and as my dad said, I prepared to be in the place, and then I worked really hard for 7 years to get myself in the place where this was going to come to fruition, and it did on the night of September 30th, 1975, when in the cable industry they brought the Thriller from Manila fight, the best heavyweight boxing match of all time, fortunately, turned out to be that, around the globe from Manila to Vero Beach, Florida, and demonstrated for congressmen and senators and people in the industry that satellites could be used for commercial purposes. And it launched that launched my career in launching what became USA Network and later on the Sci-Fi Channel. So, but that was an example of, was I lucky to be there? Maybe. I worked really hard to be there and be prepared to be able to do that. So, yeah, I think the lucky part for me was actually meeting Arthur C. Clarke, who's the gentleman, and that was very serendipitous, and he's the man that turned me on to the idea of the power of satellites when I heard him speak in 1966 in London about satellites and their power. So that was lucky that I happened to show up at a lecture that he was giving on satellites, because it was what motivated my entire career.
Do you believe in power of attraction? You were there. Mm-hmm. It's not just by accident. It just, you meant to be aligned because you were driven in that. Mm-hmm. Do you believe in that?
I do. I really do. I think that I think serendipitous moments in life really set us off on different, adventures, if you'll put it that way. But they really do. There are junctures where you make decisions, and for me, at that moment, sitting in that lecture, it was so powerful to me that I had to do something with it. It was an idea that was never let me go, and I think that if you're open and you can receive ideas from other people, and you're not closed-minded about where you're going, I think you find people that really motivate you, or that you motivate them. It happens both ways. And I believe that there is sort of a karma about all of that, that it's not to be, so spiritual that, I don't believe that, you have to prepare yourself, but I do think that it opens you've got to open yourself up to whole new ideas and find people, and you don't know when the next great idea is going to come to you from somebody else you never even knew you were going to meet. Absolutely. Because you showed up somewhere and you met them, and they really made sense to you.
I don't remember who said that, but someone said that mind is like a parachute. It only works when it's open.
Yeah.
And that's right in that alley. I do believe in that too very much. What was the most challenging or difficult, the hardest obstacle in your life you had to overcome? Might be a tough question.
I guess I look at obstacles as just, if there are obstacles, it's just something that you have to find your way around, or over, under, around, whatever way. I don't know if I had something that I said was just such a great obstacle to me. I think it was a real learning experience for me to try to make the transition from being in the media business, which I loved, and that I really love building. I think my heart is really in building businesses. I'm really a builder.
You're an entrepreneur at heart.
I think I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and I didn't know that growing up. I found I love creativity, and I learned that I love the creativity of business, but I also like the art of creativity. So I like them both, and I think that when I initially tried to make the transition to investing, I made some, similar mistakes that everybody makes, not really knowing how to do the due diligence correctly and all that sort of stuff. So the learning curve was, something that I thought, well, here you are, you've done all this, you've had all these successes. Here's a little challenge for you. Now let's see, how you feel about this challenge, and trying to learn. So that's what I encountered, was this tremendous wall of people that, really didn't see the value of, like I said, starting with women entrepreneurs. They saw no value in that. They thought, they bake cookies, don't they? I mean, I really sort of felt, maybe this is a bigger lift than I could do something with, and so I I looked at it as a challenge, sort of a personal challenge, to see if I could really change the pathway for women. And it's been 17 years. It's been a longer and heavier lift than maybe I thought it would be in the beginning. It is also extremely rewarding to see people be heard, understood, be invested in, build businesses. I think it's rewarding to me to see all that. When you say obstacles, wow, there were a lot of obstacles that we had to fight against in the beginning. I think we got much more momentum now.
Especially at that time when you started.
Oh yeah, it was like
much harder times.
Yes, it was, and even though there was money pouring over the transom, 60 days after we did our first demo day and launched our first businesses, and they got invested in, the tech market collapsed, and I just looked at our small team of people and I just said, hey, we're not going to get pushed out. We're not going to get pushed out. We're going forward, and we persisted. And those statistics that I spoke about how 22 of 26 got invested in capital coming out of Springboard, that holds up today when I say that 86% of these companies really raise capital. Over 17 years, that's a remarkable track record to really.
That is remarkable.
And it's the consistency of it year after year after year. Maybe some years are a little better than others, but I mean the consistency over this period of time is not a fluke. I mean, this is really, women are really very capable of building, scalable and sustainable businesses, but we really should be able to raise capital at parity, and we're not there yet.
Well, a lot of times women don't succeed because of lack of funding.
Yeah.
That's simple.
Yeah.
And and a lot of times, sorry, I got a phone call. I wanted to ask, how would you describe yourself in one word? Like, it has to be one word description.
Curious.
Curious. Interesting. Curious. All right, that's a coolest word. What is the most what is the biggest misconception about you? Because there is a public persona, and there is probably people don't know something about you. Only people who
I have no idea what someone's misconception would be about me. I really don't have any idea. I think maybe people don't really know that I'm like a wilderness adventurer. I'm an adventurer in life as well as in business. And so my husband and I travel to the ends of the earth to see absolutely no one. We love to be out in the wilderness by ourselves.
Really?
And yes, and we're whitewater rafters and altitude hikers, and
I did know that fact. I did
Yeah.
research. I don't think
I don't know if everybody who knows me in business knows that that's really my other life that I really absolutely love, and I feel, and I always have all my entire life, felt like being out there in nature is very healing. I just feel like all the little nicks and scratches that come, they're taken away from you during your daily sort of life. That everything, there are lots of little stresses here and there everywhere. I'll come back and get healed. You go out into nature and just enjoy it. I love being at the top of mountains and just seeing as far as you can see. I love being on white water and sort of going through rapids and the excitement of it, and it's just everything else is insignificant. You're in it, and you're in it at the moment, and it's exciting, and you're very connected to it. And I really treasure that. I treasure it, and I really make time for it to do it all the time, every year.
That's amazing. So among all you had a lot of amazing successes, but what is the most you're proud of? Like, number one.
I think I'm still most proud of USA Network and launching not only a business but an industry.
You pioneered the entire.
Yeah, and so I think I'd have to rate that number one. I feel connected to it, even though it seems almost like it was another person so many years ago. But I was there, and I was in the media business for 25 years. So I really feel very connected to it, and I still love that business. And we have a lot of companies that are in that business on the digital side, and on sort of now today's disruptive side of that business. And I also see it's moving in that direction. And one of the things I really know about it is that unless you've got to figure out how you're going to deal with how the consumer out there, the viewer out there, the listener out there is moving. You have to understand it. You have to move in the direction to create a business that is what they would like to have, because now the consumer is in control, the viewer is in control. And so you have to keep changing. You have to keep iterating as you go forward, even if you're a mature business. And I've been on the side of, on the boards of mature business.
Very difficult.
Yeah, and it's hard transition in software and media and other businesses that I've sat on boards of, and in the retail business, and every business is having to change. Even industrial businesses are having to change dramatically now in how they produce, manufacture, etc., distribute. So everything is changing, and I think that unless you absorb the importance of those changes and figure out how to utilize them to your advantage, you will ultimately be out of business. And then the other thing I would say, very close to what I'm proud of, is really what we're doing in Skyward. So many people have contributed to the success of these companies, and to have created that environment gives me a great deal of satisfaction.
It's really like a ripple effect, because you affect 660 companies, but they affect the whole nations, the whole industries. They help in saving lives, and it's stunning.
There are women out there out in the forefront of really changes that are happening in a lot of different industries. So you could take someone like Robin Chase with Zipcar, very, very early on in the sharing economy, but also in the transportation business. And she's, a serial entrepreneur. She's had, Buzzcar. Now she's the chairman of Venium, which is the Internet of Moving Things, in Stack Mesh Technologies.
Wow.
I mean, really, really, Christine Lomasny, who's in a poly production of a product, a nano technology product that is lighter, stronger, and less corrosive than steel, to replace steel in the construction industry. So, or to augment steel, in the construction industry. So people like that, or Helen Greiner over at iRobot, who brought robotics to the consumer market with Roomba after many years of having robotics for the military.
That is amazing.
And now she has Syfy Works, which is a drone company. And they're just 2/3 of our entrepreneurs are serial entrepreneurs. So we're really, they sell their companies or they go public. People that go public, like Gail Goodman over at Constant Contact, she's on the board of different companies that are developing now, and it's great to see this.
It's very inspiring.
Yes, to see the people that are really creating, disruption, but positive disruption in their business. They're bringing new things and new thoughts and thought leaders, and really bringing their companies to market. It's so exciting.
Well, and a few questions left. I mean, if you were to give yourself advice 20 years back, youngest yourself, what would that be?
Would be more than 20 years back if you're my younger self. I have to admit. I would have. I think I would have tried to learn more about the finance markets earlier on in my business career, but there was I didn't come out of those markets. I didn't even go to business school. I'm really a liberal arts student myself, and I was in the sciences. And I think that it would have been helpful, even though there was really no market for what we were doing to start the cable industry program networks. There was no market for it. People didn't think it, and I don't think it would have mattered so much, but the alternatives early on when the company was first sold, I wanted to go public, and there still was no public market for it. Maybe there were alternative markets that had developed 5 years later. Yeah, so it probably would have helped to have known more about it, and that's why we try to teach women pretty early on in their development of their companies what alternatives are available to them potentially in the financial markets, even though their product is in some other market. Yes, we have companies in fintech, but fashion tech, media tech, software development, all these different cybersecurity, AI, all kinds of companies. we want to make sure they understand the different levels of financing that could be available to them and how to peg themselves to that potential.
That is amazing. So, okay, what's next for you? What's your next moonshot?
Well,
Because
I think
I'm sure
I'm on my
there's something
moonshot.
coming.
I'm on my moonshot now, trying to get women up to parity in this marketplace. That would be really fantastic for me. But I'm also very attracted to the sciences, and I started off in
Life
sciences,
sciences,
life sciences. Yeah, I'm really fascinated with, especially what's happening with the brain and the brain research. Something that's fascinated me since I was a kid, and really, I think in the last 10 years we've learned so much more about the brain than we knew the entire history of mankind before that. And this is a fascinating area, and we can do a lot for people, I think, in terms of all kinds of diseases of the brain that we haven't really attacked yet in full force, but now we're starting to learn how to do that, and there are a lot of companies dealing with dementia, Alzheimer's, schizophrenia, things like this that I think really is a fantastic frontier that we are about to see magnificent changes in, as well as in cancer research. And we've got a lot of tools to change things now and make it possible for people to live. I'm not necessarily into like living longer, although we are living longer. I'm very much into living as healthy as possible. The quality of life, I think, has improved and will continue to improve, and I find that very exciting.
I believe that. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you taking the time.